Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And here we are with another podcast that's been a long time coming. This is my other son, and we've been wanting to do this for a couple years now. So finally we're here. Do you mind introducing yourselves?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Haroon. I'm currently in my second year of psychology, and that's me currently. So.
Okay, how old are you? How old are you? Just for the sake of
I just turned 19 recently, so still pretty young.
Still pretty young. And so you are number two in our family of 6 kids, right? So we did an interview with your older brother. So you're number 2, you're the second boy, and then we have 4 younger girls. That's just kind of the family setup. So you are in university doing psychology. You said second year, right? You've been also homeschooled, right, your whole life. Have you ever been to school? Can you tell us more about that? And, from your perspective.
Yeah, I was homeschooled my whole life. My first day of school was actually when I went to university. So that was my first day of official school. Apart from that, I used to do Quran school for most of my life, before university. But university was basically the first day of my actual schooling. And homeschooling overall, I'd say it was a positive experience. And I would say that homeschooling provides a lot of benefits that school doesn't. And there's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more freedom to do what you want and to be creative and stuff like that.
Well, there's a reason why, we kind of doing these interviews after it's all finished, because sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it's kind of hard to be practical, and hard to see the benefit of it. So, you're in university now, you can kind of compare it now. Do you wish you had gone to school, or do you feel like homeschooling prepared you for the university life? Did you feel like you missed out on anything?
No, I don't feel like I missed out on anything because all the benefits of school, I felt like I had them as a homeschooler. So even in terms of when I was a kid, one of the most frequently asked questions that I would get is, what's your social life like? Like, who do you socialize with? Like, if you don't go to school, then what do you do? Like, everybody else is in school, you're not, what do you do? But we had our own homeschool groups. We had our own friends that we'd meet up with, whether it was people that were homeschooled like us or people that went to school, but then we'd meet up after they came back from school or something later in the afternoon. So I felt that whatever things that school had that were good, whether it be social or other aspects, I'd say that I had them as a homeschooler. And I'd say that I'm definitely very happy with how it went as a kid that was homeschooled.
So you're quite extroverted. You're quite extroverted yourself, maybe, more so than your brother, who we had in the other interview. He, pretty much said that he was an introvert and he liked having his own time. So how did homeschooling work out for you as an extrovert? Did you feel lonely? Because that's a question that always comes up, who do you hang out with? Are we just locked up inside the house and not talking to anybody? Or how did that work out for you as an extrovert? Do you feel like your social battery was filled?
Yeah, definitely it was. Because first of all, I think one of the important things that I had a lot of siblings. So straight away off the bat, I had a lot of interaction there. Then apart from that, when, in my younger years, I was, doing Quran school. And in Quran school, I had a lot of friends. Then after that, I shifted more towards online friends. I had more of those. That was during, COVID and a little bit pre-COVID as well. I had like a lot more online friends. And then that was, I would say that, yeah, socially, I had enough people that I met. And even in terms of, in the neighborhood, in one of our the old places that we used to live in, I used to know like at least 30, 40 people that were, living very close by. And we'd play soccer outside basically every day after Asr, and we'd play there for like an hour or two. So I always found that, like, regardless of where I was, and I found a way to make it work. And also because of my environment, and I had the support to make it work.
Okay, so it's not like, homeschoolers are not interacting with anybody, right? If you're interested, if you're an extrovert, or if your child is an extrovert, you can find ways to meet that need. It doesn't have to be with exclusively other homeschoolers. It can be online. It can be in many other different ways. When you mention online, let's go into that part a little bit. What was the online friendship like? I think it had to do with gaming, right? So let's just jump right in. So you had quite a gaming career, right?
Yeah, so for me, it was basically gaming. But that was it. And the interesting thing was, because we lived in the Middle East, that for me, I had all of these different time zones that I would connect with. So I didn't only have people from the Middle East, but I could also connect to people, you know, that are from Europe, that are from Australia at one point, that are from
Because
North
you had the
America.
freedom to game, you know, at different time slots, right? Like you didn't have to
Yeah.
wait for school to be finished. So you could
So
game at different
I
time
had that.
zones.
And you know, online I found, you know, many people, whether even I knew people in real life that, you know, were starting to play online during COVID, a little bit before as well. So I found people that I knew in real life that played online, and then also people that I knew solely online, just, you know, just through meeting them through a game or through a group post or something like that.
Gaming is one of those like things that parents are really scared of, you know, and I must admit I was one of those parents, right? You know, I was trying to keep you guys offline as long as I could. And then, you know, it was through your father and, you know, through some other people that you guys got exposed to gaming. When did you start gaming? And, you know, how was that? Like, you know, tell us more about that. Because that's one of those issues that I always get asked about, you know, and especially when you were in the midst of your gaming career, you know, like when you were really gaming a lot of parents were like approaching me and telling me like, how are you living with this? How can you let this happen? You know, so can you tell us a little bit more about that? How did you get started and what were you doing?
So more competitively, I started later on, but I started gaming as early as when did we used to play the Peep and the Big Wide World games?
Well,
That
okay,
was when I
that's like a little computer game. Like you were a
yeah,
like
yeah, okay.
7 year old.
So after that, basically, I started playing Xbox games, you know, console games. I started playing that around maybe I'd say 7, maybe 8 years old. 8 years old is when I played more.
Through the
So I
exposure
used to
through your
play that
older
with my
brother.
brother.
So you were playing Xbox on a console, but like offline, right? Like it was just you
Yeah.
guys playing at home and sharing one
At that point, it was
Xbox.
offline. We'd play games. We'd play, you know, the campaigns. We'd play the missions, that type of stuff.
Mm.
It was all offline.
And you
Then
guys were playing. What was the setup? Just kind of, I want to be practical because a lot of people don't know how to handle gaming in their family environment. So we had a setup where you guys were gaming in the living room, right? Like out in the open on the big screen, right? That was the initial kind of start.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what
we had it.
games did you guys play?
So at that time we played Halo. I remember that. We played a
Mm,
game called Halo. It's a I'd say a better version of Call of Duty. So we
mm.
had that, and we play
So
like campaigns of like
first person shooter games, right? That's what it's
yeah,
called.
first person shooter games. Yeah, that's what it's
Yes.
called. The first
Okay,
person shooter
that's the
game.
big scary part for the parents, right? Like, you know, so I'm just kind of trying to say that, you know, for us as parents, for me at least, for my husband, not so much. He was a gamer back in his day, but I was new to all this, you know, so I had to kind of get involved and educate myself, you know, so I could support you guys through all this, right? And so I had to kind of learn the names of the games and figure out, because a lot of parents are just like, oh, my kid's gaming, but they don't even know what they're doing, right? So I think one of the steps to how to be involved is to know what the kids are playing, right? When did you guys start playing online?
So online we started, I think maybe when I was about, when would it have been? 2014 or 15? I think maybe 2015, I would say. That was more online because we used to play. Then after basically after Halo, that's when we sort of switched and we made the switch basically to Minecraft. So
Okay.
Minecraft then we played that for a while, and that went around 2015, I would say, maybe late 2014. So I was about maybe 10 years old, a little over 10, and that's when we started playing Minecraft online. But I think it also depends on the environment because certain video games, they're going to have a way, you know, less hostile online environment than others. So if you compare
Okay.
it, you know, Minecraft online, you compare it to Call of Duty online, it's a big difference, right?
It's a different environment, kind of like, you know, and I think parents are not aware that each game has its own community, has its own vibe, right? And so the big thing is really for the parents to be involved and to kind of know what's going on. So we were preferring for you guys to play on consoles, right? And particularly to play on Xbox, right? And because again, this is something my husband was familiar with. Like he was gaming on the Xbox, he knew about that. So that's kind of the path we chose for you guys to kind of to give you that exposure. Because if you guys were, I don't know, on something else, maybe we wouldn't have been able to monitor as much or to be involved as much. How did you get into Rainbow Six Siege? Because I think that was a big transition for me when you got into Rainbow Six Siege. That was like, okay, things are getting serious now. What happened there?
So at that point, I think I was about 11 years old. So this was after playing Minecraft for like 2 to 3 years. And me and my brother, we found online videos basically on YouTube, and we found videos of Rainbow Six Siege, this new first-person shooter game. It only just came out recently before that. So we got hooked basically. Like we were watching these videos, and then one of my dad's friends, you know, he hooked us up with, yeah, he had a console and everything, and he'd get us over, bring us over for lunch. And then after that, we'd play video games for a few hours. Then when Asr came in, we'd go to the masjid. So that's how we
So
sort of
this is
got
the
in.
part I want to point out, that there was a bit of adult supervision tied in here, right? So it was one of the brothers in our community who was gaming as well. And so he was kind of your mentor in that sense. At least that's how I felt, that he was kind of, because he knew more about that than I did. And so, even if he would invite you over to play games with him, before you guys started playing at home, this is, I believe this was 2016, right? Like when you guys were really into that stuff, you kind of, you were gaming with him. We felt a bit more comfortable because he knew the community, he knew what was going on, he could mentor you there a little bit. So this was kind of part of our supervision, right? And so once you started playing that, you were kind of pretty much hooked just on that game, right? Like you were not playing like a variety of games, you were just playing one game.
Yeah, so during that transition from Minecraft to Rainbow Six Siege, I continued playing Minecraft for a bit after I switched to Rainbow Six Siege completely, basically. And I played that for basically from 2016 to like the end of, well, basically the beginning of 2022. So 6 years, basically.
6 years. Okay, so that's very single-minded focus. And you played a lot, right? So this is the part, people always see the end result when we do these interviews, right? Like they see, oh, mashallah, Allahumma barik, it's, what a great young man, homeschooling has worked out great, all this Islamic environment has worked out great. The process in the middle was a bit messy, right? Like it wasn't quite straightforward. So when you say you gamed for 5-6 years, like, tell us, what do you mean? Like, how much did you actually game? Like, how did that look like?
At the beginning of the 6 years, it was less, and we went through many different stages of, the video game, the allotted time we had for video games. So there was a point, we had like around 2 hours a day. Then there was a point where sometimes on weekends we'd have more. Then sometimes at night we'd have like a certain restriction. So we went through many different phases. We had the Disney Circle at one point, which, blocked off gaming time.
Yes, I remember that. So for even us as parents, we were struggling with, how to approach this, right? Because you guys were really into it, right? So how to like restrict it, sometimes we would just say get off at 5, but then you'd be in the middle and you're like, I can't get off at 5. So it took us a while to also understand that you cannot just quit in the middle of a game. So then we'll be like, okay, are you done your round, or are you done your, is it now a reasonable time to switch? So we had different variations of like just play on the weekend. I remember one of the most epic Eids where you guys wanted unrestricted gaming time, right? Like what was it that you guys wanted for Eid as a gift?
It was the gift we wanted was to have a certain amount, maybe like 2 days it was, or 3 days of basically you can do whatever you want with gaming time. You can play as late as you want, as early as you want, do whatever, like, and you can just basically go crazy on the video game.
And did we give it to you? Like what happened with that?
Yeah, you guys did. And then we played and I enjoyed it a lot. It was a good 2-3 days of, we would stay up till like 4 or 5 a.m., then go to sleep, wake up like maybe halfway, during the day, and then continue gaming again through the night. So
do you feel compared to your peers that you had a lot more gaming time than everybody else, or a lot more freedom? Right. So homeschooling kind of tied into that you had a lot of time on your hands. So how far did you get in the game? Because, you started, okay, so like our setup, so we started off in the living room, right? On a big screen, you guys just playing. So how did it go then? Like, what were the different upgrades along the way?
So yeah, we started playing on just basically the, huge TV in the middle of the living room where everybody could see what you're doing. So that's how we started off, and that helped a lot. I think that helped a lot with monitoring and stuff like that. And then even my dad at one point, for my brother, he was logged into, because it was his Xbox account that my brother would use, that he was logged in. He had the Xbox app on his phone. So then anytime he wanted, he could go and then check the messages, check what, my brother, who he has added as friends and stuff like that. So then shortly after, we added like a monitor in the living room, and we still play there. That we had two different screens, that one my brother could play on, one I could play on. And that's sort of the transition we made then.
And then then I kicked you out of the living room because then it was becoming disruptive, because, we have other kids as well. And then you guys kind of took the gaming to your rooms. And I think this was, for me as a parent, a big transition, because now you're kind of taking it to your room. And now it's a more separate environment, right? So I had to come and check on you guys. Now you guys were not in the living room anymore. You guys had two separate monitors, you two gaming. And then, we had to set restrictions in terms of like, okay, you got to have dinner together as a family, you got to pray a salah and these kind of things. But our philosophy behind letting you have this much screen time was to just let it get out of your system. Like, you're really into it, so let's see what happens. So how far did you get involved with the game? Like, how far did it go?
In terms of the timing, in terms of the rank, in terms of what exactly?
Tell us about it. Like, you know, because you were a serious gamer, so people need to understand the amount of time it took.
So up until 2018, I used to play the games, less competitively, I'd say, still competitively, but not as much. Then around 2018, that's when I first started playing my Sunday tournaments. So I would play these tournaments every Sunday and I'd get a team, and there's like a small prize pool, it's sort of, you get like a in-game prize, and then some people, they chose to sell that, some people they chose to keep it on their weapons or whatever, as a form of pride that you won finally, right? So that's sort of what I transitioned into, started playing that more. And then I took my game to the next level, I'd say, and I became way more competitive 2018, 2019, and then also through COVID. So then, I mean, I ended up achieving very high ranks. I think during COVID, one of the seasons of the game, a season would last about 3 months. And during this season, I think I was maybe within the top 10 or top 20 in the world for Rainbow Six Siege on Xbox, basically.
Okay, so this is what we talk about when we say he was a serious gamer, right? And so I think a lot of parents are uncomfortable with, letting their kids game because they think, number one, it's going to lead to violence because this is a first person. Okay, so what is Rainbow Six Siege? For the parents that don't know, it is a first person shooter game, right? Like it's a siege, right? It's a serious violence happening on screen, right? So I think a lot of parents are uncomfortable with that, and then playing online. And but you guys, I felt like at least we always kind of knew what was going on. We knew, we had a little bit of supervision. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that kind of went behind the scenes, but at least we felt okay. We're kind of we're letting you do this at home because what we have found that any type of too many restrictions actually lead the kids to hide and then just kind of take it to another level, right? So we kind of felt, okay, at least you're doing it at home. Let's kind of support you. And then, we were supporting you in terms of, equipment and upgrading your monitors and your keyboards and your mice and whatever you needed, right? To kind of pursue that, because this was clearly your interest. Now, I felt that you were always a little bit of a different gamer than your brother, right? Your brother was very focused on winning, just playing. I thought you were more of a social guy because you had like a big community of people that you were playing with, right? Like I think you were using it also as a social exposure.
For sure I was, especially during COVID, because I remember my sister, she was talking about, how she was having a really difficult time with all the social isolation. I think at one point we didn't leave the house, apart from my dad, we didn't leave the house for something like 40 days, something
Yeah,
along
because the
those lines.
lockdown was quite strict. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but for me, in my head, I mean, I didn't really say this, but in my head, I was, or maybe I did, I'm not sure, but I was sort of like, for me, it's actually going well. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, because for me, I didn't see that. I didn't have the same experience, as a sibling right in the same house, but I had a completely different experience because of that social interaction that I had. And I think that's a big part of, well, actually, I'd say it's the primary reason why I was there playing video games. I could never have played that much. I could never have done that much if it was a solo video game or anything like that.
Yeah,
Even
it
if I
wouldn't have kept
played
your
solo,
interest, right? I don't think it would have kept your interest because I
yeah,
think,
even if I played by myself without a team, let's say, and I just, you can do this thing called solo queue. So basically you search by yourself and you play against other people, you have random teammates. Even for that, it's still social interaction that I'm craving because I'm trying to, rank high in the leaderboards and to climb the leaderboards, be better than other people, right? The whole point of it, a lot of it was, being competitive with other people and trying to, get ahead and stuff like that. So even in that sense, it was also about social dynamics and stuff like that. I think without that aspect of, social dynamics and whatever, I would not have played nearly as much as I did.
I think that's the part that parents sometimes don't understand. They don't understand what's the appeal. Okay, there's a kid in front of a screen. Okay, how can that be interesting, right? But they fail to see that there's a whole community. There's people on Twitter. There's people in Discord. Like there's people, people know each other, right? And there's issues and there's drama and there's things involved, right? So it's like a real community, right? Just based around gaming. And so I think that's the appeal for a lot of people, right? To feel like you belong to something. So it's not just like, you're behind the screen, but like you're also involved in something.
To touch on that point, yeah, that's exactly what even what psychologists are saying about shame, right? That one of the things now that's become so common, especially with the online world and video games and stuff like that, if you're feeling shame in real life, if you're feeling like you don't fit in with your friends, if you're feeling like, you might be struggling with something physically, some kids are overweight and stuff like that, right? And they're playing video games all day. There's probably a reason behind that, and it could be shame. Because a very easy way to avoid shame is to play video games. You can play video games, nobody sees your face, nobody sees who you are. If you're not liking somebody, you can just click the block button. You can't do that in real life, right? You can't just block some
and
kid
it's
at
the
your
way,
school.
people are struggling with bullying, if they're struggling with siblings relationship, with their parents even, right? Like, it's a way to tune out and just kind of join this virtual world. So when parents say that kids are gaming, it's a deeper topic that needs to be explored. It's not just about restrictions and like banning them and like taking away the cable and locking up the Xbox, but rather like trying to understand, okay, why is this kid into this? Is there any reason why it's making them?
That's even this psychology of addiction. That's exactly what they go through. They talk about, what does this do for you? That's the first question they ask, and they try to figure out, and they try to replicate the positive things that you get from it and bring it in from a thing that's more positive in video games, let's say. So for me, it was mainly social interaction that I was craving. So when I had a replacement during COVID and before COVID and after as well, I've always had that, is soccer. So I'd play soccer. When I had soccer, I would actually choose to play soccer over video games. I would go out, like even during COVID, there was a point where I was playing every day after Asr. We'd go downstairs with me and my friends and we'd go play there. So when I had that replacement, I got what I needed, because the thing I needed, I didn't need to shoot people. That wasn't the reason I was there. I was there for the social interaction. So when I had that in a fun way, positive way with my friends outside, I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. Why not? I enjoy that more anyway.
So I think a lot of times people are choosing the virtual world because there's nothing available in the real world, right? And we had this come up, because kids are busy, right? They have homework, they have things like that. It was sometimes hard to find real playmates in real life, right? It was hard to find, a neighborhood kid who is, available. But when you go online, there's always somebody available, right? So it becomes easier to kind of find that social interaction online rather than in real life, right? And especially if you're far away, if you live somewhere where it's not safe to go out and these kind of things, right? So I think for somebody, who just to say, okay, gaming is no good, let's just get rid of it. It's too simplistic. Like there's a lot more involved. For me, it was a big eye opener when you were in high school and when you started doing essays, right? And when we used to write essays about like gaming, right? And does it lead to violence? And, what are the points and why are you interested in gaming? And when you were putting that like in a written form, I think, when you were expressing what does it mean to you, like when you're winning a game and the adrenaline you feel when you win, and, when you're playing with a team, a lot of parents can relate to that if they've never played a game, right? So at least, they should kind of get involved instead of really banning it. Because games are here to stay, so it's just a way of how to monitor it. Now, you guys have always been playing on consoles like Xbox, those were like paid games, right? A lot of people play, free games like on their phones or Fortnite or whatever it is, right? Like different kind of things. Do you think one is better than the other, or like, do you have any input on that?
So I'd say that's more for, casual gamers, right? That's more for the people that they just want to, if they want to pass time, they want to get some stimulation on their phone when they're at, on a break at work or something like that, or they're on the bus or whatever, and they want to play a game on their phone like Subway Surfers or something like that. But for more of the console games and more of the paid games, those are the ones that tend to be more competitive. People still play casually, but that's the one where you're going to find the people that, really put their time and dedication into it.
Okay, so you were very dedicated, and so are you gaming now? What happened? Like,
yes, I completely stopped gaming. It's been almost 2 years now. It's been almost 2 years where I've completely stopped gaming.
okay.
And I think that was a lot because I didn't feel the need to game anymore, and I felt that I had the replacements for whatever I got from the video games. I felt like I had that elsewhere. So at that point, I was sort of thinking that, what do I really get from this video game? What do I need from it? So at that point, I sort of just stopped playing completely. It was a bit of a weird transition because it was one day, I think maybe 3 or 4 days had passed and I didn't play any games, which was unusual.
Yeah,
And then
I thought you got banned or something because I was like, okay, he's not touching the console for a while. What's going on?
So I just decided, let me keep going. Let me just see how long this can last. And then next thing you know, 1 week, 1 month, and then the next thing you know, I'm like, okay, I've basically quit now. So
So I think this is important to say here. I really can't take any credit for you not gaming, because a lot of the parents were like, oh my God, like, he's not gaming anymore. You must have done some great thing. This had nothing to do with us. It's not like we told you to stop gaming, or like, we kind of just said like, okay, this is it now. Like, it was entirely your decision, right? So from my perspective, it felt like you just got it out of your system and you had outgrown it. Does that seem like a right assessment?
Yeah,
That it was just
perhaps,
not
but
meeting your needs anymore?
yeah, perhaps I'd say that, and I'd say that's the main thing, that it didn't, not necessarily that it didn't meet my needs. It met my needs in terms of I had enough people, I had all my friends, I had all of that. But at that point, I was like, look, I've already got enough of this in real life, and I'm sort of starting to prioritize other things over this, and I don't see this as important for me anymore.
So I think this is the part where parents are scared, because they think if they let their kids game a lot or unlimited or with no restrictions or however, that they're going to turn into these addicts that they will never stop, and then they will never get a job, never do anything with their lives, right? And so our experience has been the opposite, right? That you just kind of game, almost like a kid. There was a time where you were into Legos, right? And you were playing Legos, and then you were playing Legos every day, right? Like, you guys would come, play, and then all of a sudden, nobody was interested in Legos anymore, right? That was also kind of a transition, right? Like, you guys just stopped playing with Legos, and then you moved on to something else. So this is kind of how I see it with gaming. Have you missed gaming? I mean, how long it's been that you haven't played?
I would say at the beginning I did. Maybe after a few months, I started noticing, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of tempted to play again. And then, even sometimes now I do think about it. I don't think that I want to go back, but I do think about that I had many good memories there. And I definitely do miss it in a sense, but I wouldn't go back.
Okay. So do you think the path we took was the right path, or do you think we would have done some, you wish you or us would have done something else about it? Like, do you wish you had more restrictions, or do you wish you were not exposed to gaming at all? Or looking back, like, what's your insight on gaming?
So I think the way it turned out was pretty good. I don't know what I would change about it, because I feel if there were more restrictions, then that could have led me down a path of resentment and, arguments and stuff like that, and sort of a disconnect between that relationship between parents and child. So I'd say from an aspect, it could be that. Then I would say that if I had no exposure to video games whatsoever, I'd say that wouldn't be good either, because then I feel that I could have slipped in other ways, or with other social groups and stuff like that. Because if you're not gaming, then you could easily fall into the wrong group at school or with other friends in real life or something like that.
A lot of it's, I think, about like belonging to something, right? Like belonging to a group of people who are following a similar interest. And for a lot of young people, that is gaming, right? Like it is fun, and it's exciting, and you have people that are interested in the same thing. So what would you say to parents, to parents and to young people? So two different messages. What would you say to parents, how they should approach gaming? Should they just, be very strict about it and very serious about it? Or, should they just kind of let it go a little bit?
That's a difficult question. So I would say that one of the most important things is you need to, at that point, when they're already gaming, if they're already super into it, at that point, a lot of it is, especially if they're, let's say they are addicted, then a lot of it's damage control, right? So you want to make sure you keep that connection between you and your child. You want to keep that, that open-ended, talking and stuff like that. And I'd say the restrictions, I don't know if they're necessarily good. I would say sometimes they are. I'd say sometimes they would be. But I would say more of it is about keeping that, I guess, observing what they're doing, and then talking to them, right? And understanding where they're coming from, why they do what they do, right? So a lot of times children might be causing trouble. They might be doing whatever number of problems that they're causing. And one of the most beneficial things a parent could do is just ask them, well, why are you doing this? What makes you feel this way? How come? And sort of get to the bottom of what they're feeling, right? So even kids now, like, for example, one of the most common examples is a child annoying their parent, a child annoying their dad, annoying their mom, always bothering them when they're in a call with somebody, when they're talking to their friend, when they're leaving a message or something like that. What's normally behind it is the child wanting interaction. They're not going to say that, but they're gonna, bother them in a
They
number of
show it
different
through
ways.
their behavior, right? Like the kids don't have the verbal capacity to say, hello, mom, I'm feeling neglected. Would you pay attention to me? They're rather just going to bump into you and start pulling on your sleeves or something like that, right? So sometimes it's just better to look at the behavior, right? And then to see. I think a lot of families are having a hard time talking about these things, right? And a lot of kids feel scared to tell their parents, why they're gaming, because then the kids are, parents are just going to punish them and they're going to get mad at them and just take it away, right? And I can't say that we have handled it always, with a lot of grace and patience. We have also lost our tempers, right? And again, we have a household full of people, so sometimes there were younger kids involved, sometimes there was bad language involved in the gaming, right? And then we would be like, okay, you can't talk like that, your younger sisters are listening, things like that. Sometimes we would just plug the, take the plug out and be fed up with it. And then sometimes we'd be like, okay, it's chill, let them play. So obviously, there's levels. And I think it had a lot to do, like, with our own regulation. And, and if we felt like, we were in a good spot and we had the patience to handle it. I think a lot of parents are overwhelmed with life in general. They don't have the capacity to listen to their kids, what's going on in a game, and who is involved there and these kind of things. I think it helped us that we were younger, and that that your dad was involved in the gaming kind of circles, that he kind of knew what was going on. I mean, he hasn't gamed in a long time just because he's been so busy, but I mean, there was times where he would play Halo with you guys and things like that. I think that helped, at least for us, to be involved, because I think a lot of parents don't even know what Xbox is compared to, I don't know, a Nintendo or PS4 or whatever, right? So I think the key is to be involved regardless of what your kids are doing. Like, maybe it's not gaming, maybe it's something else, but you have to kind of be involved and try to understand, what is the kid doing. So we were homeschooling, you were gaming, now you're in university, so clearly the gaming hasn't been that detrimental to your development. How did your high school look like, or how did your homeschooling in high school look like? Because you clearly gamed a lot, so what else did you do?
So I'd say homeschooling in high school, a lot of it was very flexible, very laid back. Mainly, I mean, there were some things that I enjoyed a lot in terms of extracurricular activities. One of them, we went, I think, maybe right before COVID, I think we went to a convention, I think, and it was basically these astronauts, right? And these guys, I think they were the first people from the Emirates that were in space, something along those lines.
Yes. It was the Emirates Literature Festival, yeah.
Yeah, so I met a bunch of other people there, and I really enjoyed that, and it stuck with me, right? So a lot of things like that definitely shaped my experience in high school. And I think that with high school anyways, I think it's good to have a little bit less pressure on you, because a lot of people, they have tons of pressure on them, and I know so many of my friends, even at that time when they were in high school, we'd be asking to hang out, and then they'd be like, no, I'm doing these mock exams, I'm doing these different tests, I'm busy, I'm too busy for this, I need to prepare for my exams that are 3 months from now. So they're already busy all day studying, and they don't actually grow skills outside of that. All they know is just how to be, basically a computer in front of, their homework and stuff like that, and be a robot basically. So,
and there was a lot of pressure. So we have to kind of here put the disclaimer, the way we were homeschooling is very, it's actually called unschooling. Like, it's very, very laid back sort of approach. We were under an American umbrella school called Clonlara. They've been around since 1967, I think. They're based in Michigan. So they are very much interested, in autonomous learning and child-led learning and these kind of things. So they understood that learning happens in many different ways, so this way we could have a lot of freedom, and obviously you were getting work done. You had some online classes that we outsourced for certain things. I think a little bit of math and a little bit of chemistry and physics, right? Just, certain parts. But I think you enjoyed the social sciences more, right? You enjoyed the language arts more. I particularly enjoyed the essay writing classes, because I think this was something, that we could kind of bond over and talk about stuff, right? And the writing, and especially because you were not a very motivated writer for a long time. So you didn't really write much, so I think it took off maybe when you were grade 11, approximately like 16, 17, I think, when you took the Brave Writer courses, right?
and I think that's one thing that helps a lot with, because I had that creativity, because I had that flexibility, I could figure out what I liked, and I wouldn't feel that pressure. Because a big problem, what happens with kids that only get acceptance when they get good grades, or when they're doing specific courses, or on their road to becoming a doctor, then they become so obsessed with that, they feel that if they do anything other than that, they're going to lose their acceptance of their parent. They're going to lose that creativity. And then as a result, they're actually going to do worse in their studies. They're going to be stuck doing something they don't want to. So for me, because of that environment that I grew up in, I felt very comfortable in choosing my courses and choosing what I wanted to do and what I wanted to study. I didn't feel pressure to become a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or something along those lines. So for me now in university, I pick almost nothing outside of social sciences, because for me, that's something that I enjoy very much. I don't feel pressured. I never felt the pressure that I have to, enroll in some nursing program or in some, biomedical field or something along.
I think this is a big one in the Muslim community. I think you're pretty much, the only one, right? In university, when you come, all the Muslim boys are doing engineering and IT and medical stuff, right? And I think you're choosing a different path, right? Like you're doing social studies, you're doing psychology, you're doing, English writing classes and things like that. And I think that's where homeschooling comes in, because you can nurture your strengths rather than push it against, focus on your weaknesses. And I think of the school system focuses on that, okay, yeah, you got a bad grade, you got to study, do this, where we were just kind of, okay, this is your strength, let's focus on, encouraging you in that department. So how did you pick psychology? What happened? How did you decide to do that? Did you always know you wanted to be a psychologist?
No, I never had that, from when I was 6 years old, I wanted to be a psychologist because of my grandfather was a psychologist. I never had that. But
okay,
throughout my teenage years and a little bit before that, I was already more inclined to social sciences. And as a kid, I'd be lying if I said I ever enjoyed math or I ever enjoyed physics or chemistry or biology. I never enjoyed any of those. So social sciences was always going to be the pick for me, I'd say. But it was funny that because last year, basically, when I was, enrolling in university and also in a college, where I am, I enrolled in HVAC, which is,
so that was like the total opposite, right? You were kind of keeping your options open, like right?
And so then
you were going to do something very practical, get a job kind of thing, right?
So alhamdulillah, I ended up picking psychology. I'm very glad that I did, because I don't know how I would have managed to, do well in HVAC. So for psychology, I think it's the perfect fit for me. Either that, or if I didn't pick psychology, I still would have picked something else. Now looking back, I would have picked something else, maybe sociology or something like history. But I think psychology was the best pick for me.
Okay, so I think this is the part of just kind of following, one step at a time where your interests go, right? Even though it might not be the most popular thing, right? Psychology is going to take some time, right? Like I don't think you can have a career just with a bachelor. I think, you have to pursue a master's and a PhD and these kind of things, right? But this is definitely your interest, right? So we as parents, we were kind of trying to encourage you to look at different options, right? And then the process was like, okay, let's rule out all the things that you don't want to do. And then it was like, okay, let's try to do something practical. Now, what was behind the HVAC decision? Like, can you walk us through that? Why we were thinking of doing some program like HVAC, right? Because you do have an interest in Islamic studies, right? So can you tell us more about that?
So HVAC, yeah, I think I primarily chose it because it was only a 2-year program. And after 2 years, I wanted to sort of get straight into, working or having a degree and having that open to me. And also because I wanted to go study in the Islamic University of Medina. That was my goal basically since I think maybe beginning of 2022. That's when I found out about the University of Medina, and I was pretty interested in it. I'm like, oh, this looks amazing. So because of that, I think I was close to picking HVAC.
Okay, yeah, because you wanted something practical as a backup, something that you could be done quickly, so you can then focus on the Islamic studies and things like that. How is that going? Do you still feel interested in pursuing Islamic studies, or are you set on psychology?
Yeah, I'd like to combine and do both. So just this morning, I was trying to finish up my application to Medina University this year, and also a few other universities in Saudi Arabia. So I think because I've looked recently, even, my own observation is that there are barely any, if any, Muslim psychologists that are male Muslim psychologists, first of all, that have a good understanding of both. Because there's many, let's say shayukh or something that speak about psychology or claim to speak about psychology, but they don't actually know it. They haven't been trained properly. They've not went through a full proper psychology program, and into their post, graduate studies and stuff like that. And on the other side, you have people that are knowledgeable in psychology, but they barely have a clue when it comes to Islam. So I want to try to be that bridge that, merges the two together and brings, you know, the Islamic side and then also the psychological side, and then join the two together.
And particularly, there's not many people that are dual trained, right? That are trained in both, because it seems like, you know, whoever is interested in secular studies then starts neglecting the Islamic part, or the ones who that pursue Islamic studies, they neglect the other part.
Exactly.
You know? So, and like you said, particularly males, because I work with a lot of women, and then, you know, when the women finally get to me and then they say, okay, my husband's on board, he would like to get some help, then they're like always asking, okay, well, who is the Muslim psychologist, or who is the Muslim psychologist who is upon Quran and Sunnah, and it's very difficult to find, right? So there's definitely need for that in our community, and maybe somebody else will be inspired to kind of follow the same path, because I think Muslims are very much in that mind of let's do secure, financially well-paid jobs, you know, let's be a doctor, engineer, and these kind of things. And I think especially for men, there's that idea that you have to provide, right? So you have to get a good job, and you have to get a, you know, well-paid kind of thing. You have to be successful in the dunya sense. But like you said, it's important to follow your interests regardless of the pressure, because I think a lot of students, and you might see this in the university, right? They're not happy with what they're studying because there's a lot of pressure just from their parents, right? To study engineering or medical school, or, you know, anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in terms of the people that I've met here, I've met, I'd say 99% perhaps, it would be people that are in engineering, computer science, biomedical sciences, maybe pre-health, something like that. So it's like engineering, computer science, and medical stuff. That's basically what I've been coming across. And I've met about 3 other Muslim men that are in psychology, which is, you know, not surprising, but at least there are some people, right? And I think that's slowly going to be shifting, you know, very gradual, slow change. But because people, Muslims, are becoming more accepting of psychology and more accepting of,
well,
you know,
admitting
studying.
finally that mental health is an issue, right? So everybody has issues. And I think there's this idea in the Muslim community, just as long as you have a strong iman, you have no issues whatsoever, right? Like you shouldn't suffer. But there's many Muslims that suffer, you know, with depression and anxiety, and there are many other issues that are correlated, not just the lack of iman, right? And so that's why it's important, I think, to have somebody who's going to approach it from both sides. You know, there's definitely that emptiness of the soul that can happen if you're not a practicing Muslim, you know, with a strong belief. But then there's also anxiety and depression and a variety of disorders like bipolar or ADHD, or, you know, different kind of things, right? And so we have experience with ADHD in our family, right? And that might have prompted you kind of, you know, a bit more, because we had a pretty open discussions in our home regarding therapy and regarding, you know, seeking help and these kind of things. So we're glad you chose psychology, right? And I'm even more glad that you were enjoying it, right? Like, you know, because you never know till you get to university, how is it going to be? Like, are you going to find it enjoyable or not? So how has university been? Has it been really hard compared to homeschooling? Because you had this chill homeschooling, you know, where you were gaming and, you know, having fun, and now you're in university. How has that been? Like, how was your experience, or how has your experience been so far?
So my first year, and so far up until now, I'd say it hasn't been too difficult. But the thing is, I haven't really been as efficient, or, you know, I haven't optimized things as well as I wish I could have. But I think for me, the past year and a half, I've been using mainly to figure out how to study, right? How to manage things in university, how to manage your time, how to do all of these different things. So I've been more on that journey, and then sort of fixing the methods that I'm using to study and the methods that I'm using to manage my life and work and, you know, social life and the masjid and, you know, Muslim community, helping out and stuff like that. So managing sort of all of those and fitting it onto my plate and figuring out how to do that. So I say that's been what I've been focused on, more on that than actually just studying mindlessly, right?
Yeah, just kind of optimizing the whole system, because, you know, now you live away from family, you have to kind of manage these things, and you're on your own, and then you have to manage your commitment in the community and things like that. Have you found the community in university? Like, how's the social life been there for you, since you're, you know, a big extrovert? You know, have you been able to find like-minded people? Because again, you moved from the Middle East to the West, you know, how has that been?
So alhamdulillah, I found many people. We have at the university, we have a Muslim student association, as many universities do, and we have a musalla there, so people come and pray. For most salahs, especially dhuhr and asr, on, you know, days where there are classes, then normally you're going to find at least, like, you know, maybe even 2-3 lines filled with people that are there ready to pray right after the adhan comes in. and then we pray there. Then on Fridays we have Jumas. We hold the Friday prayer basically. We have like the gym there booked, and we made these arrangements with the university and with the administration there, and they gave us this place every week for Friday prayers. So we also have in the Muslim Student Association, we have our own events. We had recently like a welcome night. Then we have Islamic Awareness Week. That's like in the winter. So we have different stuff like that, different events that bring the community together. We even have, funnily enough, we have a brothers gaming night and then a separate sisters gaming night that's coming up soon.
Okay. So when you say gaming, like actual gaming or like board games kind of gaming?
Both. So there is the board game option, and then normally there's like a TV there, and then they have like a PlayStation with like FIFA and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a question, since you had such a weird upbringing with a lot of travel and obviously living in the Middle East and, going to Bosnia in the summers and things like that, do you feel like you stand out, or do you fit in, like when you are around your peers? Like, do you feel awkward? Do you feel like, oh, I wish I was different? Or like you're okay the way you are and you feel like, okay, this is good?
I'm comfortable in my own shoes, but I do feel that I am different than other people. And a lot of people, maybe not my age as much now, but at least a year or two ago, definitely I would have said that a lot of people that were my age weren't the same as me. They didn't have the same interests as me, and they were more interested in sort of, I don't know, goofing off and just always having fun time and laughing and stuff like that, and weren't really focused on anything else other than that.
So you think maybe homeschooling and this way of life we live made you more mature?
Yeah, I would say it definitely made me more sure. It made me, especially the traveling part, right? And seeing different, having different experiences, visiting, a lot of different places in the world. That helped a lot. It helped me mature a lot, and basically just learning through experience.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Yeah, because this is the feedback we continuously get, when we show up somewhere with the kids, that the kids are always more mature, or that they appear mature, that they are easy to talk to and these kind of things. But I think that has to do with us involving you guys, and, because you guys are always with us, and, whatever experiences we have, when Baba would do things, when he would have friends over for dinner, you guys would be there. Or when we're traveling, meeting other people in the community, you guys are involved. You guys are not in school 8 hours a day with your peers, right? Like you were always in a mixed environment. You were always, with our friends, right, who are of various ages, right? So I think us being involved
And
in
the funny thing is, I'd say now that the homeschoolers that I know, they've ended up being more socially competent and, socially just more understanding and more caring and more mature than people that were constantly having social interaction in school, because of the dynamic social interaction that homeschoolers have with their friends, with their parents, with people that are in school, that are outside of school, and also because of the opportunity to travel and all of that. And then they sort of, bundle that all up together, and then that shapes their, their social personality and stuff like that.
I think that's an important point you bring up, because I think a lot of parents that are homeschooling, they're just starting out, right? When they have little ones, that they might have a 6 or 7 year old, they're scared. They don't know where this path is going to lead them, right? They're thinking, okay, is my kid, especially maybe if they have a shy kid, or if they have a super extroverted kid, like how are they going to fit into the society? Like, are they going to know how to talk to others? Are they going to know how to take their turn? And especially since homeschoolers tend to be quirky with their interests, right? Like you guys were hyper focused on Legos, and then you were hyper focused on origami, and then gaming and all these kind of things. And it's like, okay, you're wondering, how is this person going to turn out at the end of it, right? And we had a lot of trust over the years, just kind of hoping, okay, this is going to lead. Like you cannot have, there's no guarantee, right? Like you just kind of have to take it one step at a time, and then, trust that the process will work out, inshallah, that you give your kids autonomy, that you give them, the ability to make their own decisions, and then you hope for the best. And of course, you make a lot of dua. A big part of your upbringing, and I think we'll finish it off with that last topic, well, 2 more topics, I guess, has been memorizing Quran, right? And so when we started this channel many, many years ago, my idea was like, that we would be posting little updates. And over the years, we managed to post little clips, but nothing really, because we were too busy with our life, with our lives and the living setup. So we're kind of trying to catch up on that. How has memorization of the Quran been? Like, when did you start? How did it go? Where are you at right now? Can you tell us more about that?
So it's been sort of a bumpy road. So I started when I was about 5 years old. That's when I started with, for those who know about the Qaida Nuraniya and the Arabic alphabet and stuff like that. So that's sort of what I started off with. And then I progressed on.
Where did you start? Can you just give people an idea? Like, did you start at home? Which city were we living in? Just kind of fill them in on that.
So yeah, at that time we were in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia. And I didn't start at home. I would do homework and practice stuff at home, but I would primarily I was doing it in the Quran school that we were, going to.
Yeah, we were Markaz al-Furqan. Like we were at the school where the Qaida Nuraniya was published. So you had a good head start in that sense, right? So you were at the source. So you started with the Nuraniya at 5, and then how did it go?
So yeah, then I progressed onto the Quran shortly after, maybe when I was about 6. So I think I started when I was 5.5 maybe, then moved on to the Quran, actually reading and memorizing when I was about 6. Then I basically continued. Then later on in my later years, I'd say maybe like around 12 to 13, that's where sort of the interest, I'd say, dropped off a bit. I think most kids, they have that sort of either preteen or teenage years, they sort of not as interested in it, or because they maybe feel that when they're a kid, it's more easy to follow orders, right? And to just stick to what's been given to you and your schedule and whatever set of tasks you have to do. But when you grow older, you're like, okay, but why am I doing this? So I'd say that's sort of what my journey transitioned into, was, why am I doing this? So then I'd say about like 16 or 17, maybe 17, that's when I sort of got into it again, but for myself.
On your own terms, right?
Yeah, on my own terms. So then now I've sort of restarted my Quran memorization journey, and it's been about 1.5 years maybe since I've restarted it. And that's what I've been doing for now.
So I think, this describes it kind of adequately. So when you are a child, it's kind of more parent-led, right? Like we were the ones pushing you. We were the ones kind of telling you, okay, now it's time for class. Now it's time for homework. And the advantage of the younger years is that kids are memorizing fast, and, but it also depends on the environment, right? And I think somewhere in there we moved, right? We moved to the UAE. So after we left Saudi, there was a big transition, and then the Quran schools were not really working out. We didn't have the same setup. So we kept switching between different schools until we finally quit Quran schools altogether, right? Because we were not happy with the setup and things like that. And then our experience, even with the other kids, has been, that, there's only so much you can push in this parent-led journey, because there comes a point where the child or teenager or the young adult has to take charge of their own learning, right, in terms of Quran memorization, and they have to. Are you memorizing, or are you revising now with anybody, or are you just kind of doing it on your own?
Mainly doing it by myself, but I am also occasionally doing it with other people. So I found for myself, both have their benefits with doing it with others and doing it by yourself, because by yourself, you can get more done. But the problem is actually getting started when you're by yourself, because when you're with other people, then you can get started, but it's just less efficient because there's so many students, there's only one teacher, and you have to follow a specific program. You can't really have that flexibility you can't have that flexibility that you have when you're by yourself. So mainly I'm doing it by myself, but occasionally with others as well. And I'm doing
for us as
a
parents,
combination of memorization and revision right now. So memorizing and then also revising the stuff that I've already memorized.
So for us as a parents, this was a big learning curve, because we did all the unschooling with every other subject, but then with Quran learning, it was really bumpy for us as parents as well, because everybody was saying, you need to have a sheikh, the kids need to go to Quran school, especially because we're non-Arabs, right? So we felt we were not qualified enough. But in hindsight, I think a lot of these Quran schools have done more damage than good, right? And so we are taking a different approach now with the younger kids. We're kind of, we're doing the unschooling Quran thing at home now, with them. So, your younger sisters have a different experience, and I think, everybody we'll do an interview with your sister as well, about her experiences. Each child had a different experience. Even your brother had a different experience than you. And even though you guys were in the same Quran schools, what do you think, in terms of comparing Quran schools to like the way of homeschooling, right? Like, was the Quran school a great setup, or like school in general? Like, do you feel like the Quran school setup can be done better, or was it good, or was it adequate? Like now, what you know about learning and things like that, like, do you feel this was adequate?
Quran school, it can be a hit and miss. And Quran school, I think it does need slight variation to make it work out. So I think it can work. I think it definitely can, because there's a lot of good aspects of it that that people experience, when it's social interaction and having other friends in your class and classmates, and you read Quran with each other, joke around, go eat together, hang out together, all that type of stuff. But then also there can be in some Quran schools sort of like this heavy burden of pressure, and that you have to get this amount of pages done at this time and this amount of revision and everything, and it's less autonomous.
So I think that's one lesson we learned, because I think, you know, what the Muslim community always tells you is like, oh, when was it that you completed the Quran, or how long did it take you to complete the Quran? But I think it's really a journey, and I think it's, you know, even a lifetime. So even if you were to complete the Quran today or tomorrow, you still have to continue reading, right? Like you still have like a whole lifetime of reading ahead of you. So I think the approach should be slightly different in that sense. Homeschooling, university, Hifdh, alhamdulillah, we covered all that. The last one we're going to hit is marriage. How is that working out? So tell us where you're at. Are you looking to get married? We already did an interview with your brother. So what's your situation at the moment? Keep in mind, you're 19, right? Let's remind the audience that you're 19.
So alhamdulillah, I'm not looking for marriage. I'm currently engaged. I got engaged a few months ago, and inshallah, I'll be getting married next year. So that's where I'm at right
now. Okay, alhamdulillah, Allahumma barik. So he's not looking to get married. He is already.
I got to make that very clear.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So you're quite young. Is this something your peers are experiencing as well, getting married young, or do you feel like?
Nope. Not at all. I don't really know anybody else that's around my age that's getting married, or even interested. Like there's a lot of people that are my age. I even talked to one brother recently. He's maybe like a year younger than me, and he was saying that he wasn't interested. So there's not many people that you're gonna find like that are interested.
All right.
And let alone the people that actually go through.
When did you start thinking of marriage, or like, you know, what was like, when did you want to get married, and how did you like decide to get married, and do you think you're ready to get married? That's what always everybody's asking. So tell us more. Walk us through the steps.
So when I was about 17, I think just after I turned 17, because I remember it very specifically that it was a note. I remember very vividly. I wrote a note to myself, and it was like, you know, hey Haroon, you know, in a few years from now, like I'm 17 right now, I'm trying to get married, but I'm currently not married and stuff like that. That's what I was writing about. So I'd say that's the first record and the first time that I was looking for marriage. Then for about like a year and a half, but later on, 17, I was interested in it, but we weren't really looking. Then
we were having conversations about that, right? Like, because I think people always confuse that. They think like, okay, you decide to get married and the next day you find somebody and that's it. Like it's a process, right? So when did it get more serious? From this long time frame between 17 and 19, you know, how did it, what happened in there?
So actually, it's funny because when I was 17, I think my dad, he told me, he's like, that it's going to be hard for you you're going to get married when you're like 19, inshallah. And at the time I was like, 19, that's such a long time. Like, how does that work out? Like, how does that?
So like, even us as parents were telling you it's unlikely you're gonna find, you know, you're gonna get married at 17.
So I'd actually, but I would say that I would counter this, and I would say, don't tell your children that, even though it's gonna happen most likely. It's not gonna be that they're gonna get married the next day, but I think just let them have that sort of ambition and the hope and the aspiration that they want to get married.
Don't squash their dreams, right? Don't tell them, oh my God, you're not ready.
Oh, you're not going to get married until after university. It might be true. You might know that as a parent. You might know that as their friend or whatever. But just saying that, even if they know it's true, I probably knew at that time that it was true. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to get married, like, you know, in 3 months from now. But I still wanted to have that, you know, the beacon of light still alive, right?
Yeah, so like to feel supported, to feel heard, right? Like that we're not entirely dismissing you, right? And so
so I was 17, you know, that's when I had the idea of marriage. Then when I was around when I turned 18, maybe a little bit after, a little bit before, give or take, that's when we started, you know, inquiring more. We started messaging a few of our closer friends that you know, that know us well, and we inquired like about.
You had started university already at that point, right?
Yeah, I'd say that was actually, you know, I think right before I started university, that's the first like sort of inquiry that we had, that we asked one of our friends about, you know, a relative that they knew that was around my age. Then after that, there's a few different tries, a few different, you know, ideas, inquiries, stuff like that, different proposals. But about a year from then, basically, or a little bit less than a year, that's when I met my fiance.
So how do you feel the process went? Was it like a difficult process? Do you feel like there was rejections? Do you feel like you were second guessing yourself in the whole idea of like, should I even be getting married? Like, was it, because I remember it being a bit bumpy, right?
No, I definitely didn't regret it. I always wanted to, even after whatever experiences we had, I still wanted to get married regardless. And it was just a bit longer because it wasn't because that there was a bunch of different meetings that we had and never worked out with anybody, or I was rejecting people or people were rejecting me, but it was just that there were so little options there were people like we didn't really have any throughout that course of, let's say, a year. I think there might have been like 2 or 3 different, families that we actually thought, okay, this could actually work. But apart from that, even those, like some of them, they didn't even go past, we didn't even talk. Like it was just like an inquiry, and then we're like, actually, this doesn't really work out, and that's it, right?
So I think because you're so young, right? Like it's hard. The pool of candidates is shrunk, right? Because you have only certain ages to work with, right? And it's like difficult to approach people. And there isn't, I feel like in the Muslim community, people talk about like, oh yeah, sure, we should encourage people to get young. But when it comes down to it, not my daughter, not my son, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
In general,
difficult.
but my daughter, my son, they're not ready yet. That's not them.
Yeah. So that's the idea. Yeah, we support young marriage. This is so cool, but yeah, but our kids are not ready for that. What makes you think you're ready for marriage? Like that's a big question. We get that all the time as your parents. Like, how come these boys are ready? Like, and especially because your brother's already married and then you're getting engaged. So we get a lot of questions in the community, like, how are these boys ready? Are they even ready? How are they going to provide for their families? That's a big one, right? So how do you feel ready? Like, are you
So
ready?
I think most of the time at this age, nobody's gonna feel ready. I don't think anybody can feel ready for it anyway. But it's about willing to accept that you're gonna make mistakes, that the things are gonna be bumpy. They might not always work out, optimally and stuff like that. But it's about building that journey and that bond together from a younger age when you're with somebody else and when you're married, to build that from that, instead of waiting until you're 30 years old, you have your whole life sorted out, you're ready, but you haven't grown with the other person. You've lived your whole life alone. And when they come into your life, you're not ready for it, right? In that sense, you're not ready for it. You might be ready financially and physically and all of these different things, but you're not ready actually to have that, emotional connection with them. Whereas when you're younger, you can actually have that emotional connection with them. And then you can learn to both work together. And generally, those are the relationships that are the most successful. The ones that, I'm not 100% sure, these are not all, everything's not perfect, right? It's not a perfect situation that we're in, but the thing is, we're going to work through it no matter what, and we're going to do our best,
the
right?
willingness to make it work, right? And obviously, oops. Okay, so we just had a little glitch there, something with a phone call cut us off. So we're just going to be right back here with the conversation. So we were talking about being ready for marriage. So let's just finish it off with the final question, because I think we're probably over an hour at this point. How did you know that your fiance was the right person? Because I think a lot of people are like, did you have some sort of checklist? What did you have in mind? How do you go about picking somebody? And how do you know they're the right person for you? Inshallah.
So sometimes the checklist is good and sometimes it's not so good. So if you just keep adding things on your checklist and keep looking for the perfect person, then it's not really going to work out, because there is no perfect person, right? And the same thing for yourself. It's actually a lot of the times more useful to work on yourself than instead of expecting
make the checklist for yourself then, right?
Yeah, so you could do that in a way, but I think it's more about when you meet somebody and then you have that connection, you have that, a lot of the times you will know if that person's right for you, and you will know based on the circumstances, based on how you connect, how your personalities are, how they work with each other. And a lot of that dictates how the relationship is going to turn out in the end. And a lot of it is understanding beforehand. So the first thing you should probably do, I'd say, is to make sure that you guys sort of have your plans aligned, right? And you guys are sort of have the same goals and the same,
so kind of get the non-negotiables out of the way.
Get that out of the way. Then I would say that's where you sort of delve more into the connection between, you two and stuff like that. Because if you jump into that straight away, a lot of the times, actually what happens when you fall in love, a lot of your brain, actually, a lot of executive function, a lot of parts of your brain are actually inhibited and they function worse. Right. So when you're already in that and you haven't made these decisions, these important decisions on where you guys want to be, do you guys, important questions like, do you even want to have kids? Do people want to have kids? Do you guys want to live this type of life? Do you guys want to live, what kind of lives do you want to live together? So paint like a general picture for yourselves. And then after, that's sort of where you have more of that, like I'd say, the falling in love with them, right?
Yeah, just kind of that chemistry. So there should be a connection. So rather than not just the checklist, but also then the personality vibing and, just kind of fitting in. So you're getting married, inshallah, next year. How are you preparing to get married? What are the steps you're working on So you're prepared for marriage next year, inshallah.
So I mean, for me, I don't have like a wallpaper where I have like, 10 things to get done before marriage, but I'm just doing what I can in terms of, and I think it's pushed me a lot as well to make sure that I'm, doing as much as I can in terms of work, in terms of university, social activities, being involved, and sort of trying to be the best version of myself. Because I think that's one of the first steps to a successful relationship, is working on yourself and making sure that you're the best for the other person. And putting the other person ahead of yourself. The best relationship is when you put yourself ahead of, them ahead of yourself, and they put, you ahead of themselves, right? So when you have,
everybody is kind of working, both sides are working to be the best version of themselves, and then, trying to improve themselves, inshallah. So you're working as well, you're studying, keeping a busy life. So I appreciate you taking the time for this podcast. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about it for a really long time. So I'm really glad you made the time for this, inshallah. And then I'm hoping the audience will get some benefit from it, inshallah. And then we'll see if there is a demand for more episodes, inshallah. I think
if there's any more questions related to a topic that we didn't cover, or you guys have more questions,
put it in the comments down below. If there's more, we can make another episode, inshallah. I think the next podcast will be with your sister. So I think she's been wanting her turn, and then we'll kind of do it in order. But definitely we can bring you back on, for any of these topics that, that are relevant that we mentioned today, because it was kind of all over the place. But at least, we got a good update, of what you've been up to in your last 19 years here. So thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, for making the time. And inshallah, I'll talk to you soon again, hopefully. All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.